Why did you arrest him, officer? He had a tone. A tone or a color? They tried to break him, but he stood calm and made the whole system shake. You think you can talk your way out of this, huh? I don't talk my way out. I walk with truth. We'll see how far that truth takes you, Mr. Hill. The late afternoon sun burned low across the Atlanta horizon, painting the sky in gold and orange. Marcus Hill drove his dark blue SUV slowly through the narrow stretch of Oakwood Avenue. His hands rested easy on the steering wheel, an old blues song whispering through the speakers, the kind of song that made you think about the past, the kind of melody that reminded him of his father's humming on long drives through Mississippi years ago. Marcus had always loved silence, the kind of silence that allowed him to think. He had just finished a long day teaching young men at the Community Law Center about civil rights, traffic laws, and how to stay calm under pressure when facing law enforcement. It was something he believed deeply in. Knowledge is power, he often told them. Calmness is armor. He turned at the light near Brookwood Street when the red and blue lights flashed in his mirror. That sound, the rising siren, the pulsing echo of authority. It was not new to him. He pulled to the side calmly, turned down the radio, and took a slow breath. His fingers stayed still on the wheel, eyes steady in the mirror. Behind him, 2 white officers stepped out. One tall and heavy, the other slim with a sharp jawline. Their steps were deliberate. Too deliberate. Marcus rolled down his window. "Good afternoon, officer," he said, polite but neutral. The tall one leaned down, his glasses reflecting the setting sun. "License and registration." Marcus reached slowly for his wallet. "Of course. May I ask the reason for the stop?" "You didn't signal your turn back there," the officer said flatly. Marcus glanced at his mirror. "I'm pretty sure I did, sir." The second officer moved closer, his hand resting on his belt. "Step out of the vehicle, please." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Am I being detained?" "Step out of the car, now." He sighed softly, unbuckled, and stepped out. The air was thick with the smell of exhaust and hot pavement. He could feel eyes from nearby porches watching. The taller officer walked around the SUV, pretending to inspect the back. "We got a report of a vehicle matching this description. Involved in a hit-and-run about 15 minutes ago," he said. Marcus's eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's impossible. I was teaching at Oakwood Community Center all afternoon. I can show you the time log." "Sir?" The slimmer officer cut in. "Hands behind your back." "For what charge?" Marcus asked. "Violation of state property and resisting inspection." Marcus blinked. The term was nonsense. There's no such thing as resisting inspection in Georgia law. The taller one smirked. "Guess you'll learn something new today." The cuffs clicked cold around his wrists. The metal pressed into his skin, but he didn't resist. "Officer," Marcus said quietly, "you're making a serious mistake." The slimmer one muttered. "We'll let the court decide that, Professor." As they walked him to the cruiser, a few bystanders began recording. One woman shouted, "He didn't do anything!" Another man called out, "That's Marcus Hill! He teaches my nephew!" But it didn't matter. The door slammed shut, sealing Marcus in the back seat. The sound of metal, the hum of the police radio, and his own heartbeat filled the small space. He looked out the window as the houses rolled past. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even surprised. He was just disappointed. He thought of his students. He thought of how he told them, "Stay calm, stay respectful, don't let emotion take your voice away." Now it was his turn to live by that lesson. He leaned his head back against the seat, eyes half closed, and whispered to himself, "All right, Marcus, let's see what they've got this time." The patrol car turned toward the precinct, lights flashing through the fading sunset. Inside the Oakwood County precinct, the fluorescent lights buzzed weakly, painting everything in pale yellow. Marcus's wrists were still cuffed when they brought him to the booking counter. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and sweat. Officer Dugan, the heavier one, began typing on the keyboard. His partner leaned against the wall, arms folded. "Name," Dugan said without looking up. "Marcus Hill. Age, 46. Occupation." Marcus paused. "Teacher." The second officer laughed under his breath. "Yeah, sure. Another teacher with a fancy SUV." Marcus didn't reply. He looked straight ahead, calm. They took his wallet, phone, and keys, placing them into a gray plastic tray labeled Hill. Then they rolled his fingertips across the ink pad for prints, pressed them onto the paper, snapped a photo, and handed him a numbered tag. When it was done, Dugan finally looked up. You got any priors? No. You ever been arrested? Not since the military. That line made both officers pause. You served? The slimmer one asked. Yes, long time ago. Army? Marcus gave a short nod. Yes, Army. They didn't ask further. They didn't care. He was led down the hall into a small holding cell with 4 metal benches. A flickering TV in the corner showed a muted news broadcast. 3 other men sat quietly. 2 young, 1 older, all tired and worn. Marcus sat down in the corner. The cold metal bench bit into his back. He closed his eyes. One of the younger men looked over. What they get you for, brother? Violation of state property, Marcus said lightly. The man frowned. What's that? Marcus smiled faintly. I wish I knew. They laughed softly. It broke the tension for a moment. Hours passed. The cell stayed quiet except for distant footsteps, the occasional clang of a door and the steady buzz of the fluorescent light. Marcus's mind wandered, not to anger, but to strategy. He thought about his students again, especially Jamal, the shy 19-year-old who always asked, Sir, what if the cops just don't listen? Marcus's answer echoed now in his mind. Then you stay calm. You keep every word clear, every movement slow, and every fact ready. Let them lose control, not you. He smiled faintly in the dim light. Maybe this was his lesson now. Maybe this was the test he'd been teaching all along. At midnight, the cell door opened. Marcus Hill, the guard called. He stood. That's me. You've got a court appearance at 8:30 in the morning. Sit tight till transport comes. Marcus nodded. All right. As the guard walked away, Marcus sat again, his eyes fixed on the small barred window above. Through it, he could see a faint strip of the night sky, the stars barely visible through city haze. He whispered quietly to himself, Whatever this is, you'll handle it, like always. He leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes, steadying his breath. Somewhere deep inside, the soldier in him stirred. Tomorrow, he knew, was going to be a long day. The morning light crept slowly through the narrow windows of the Oakwood County Courthouse. The walls smelled faintly of old paper, disinfectant and something colder, judgment. Marcus Hill sat in a corner chair, wrists cuffed, dressed in an orange county jumpsuit. His calm eyes scanned the quiet courtroom. The benches were mostly empty except for 2 reporters, the 2 officers from the night before, and a few local onlookers who had seen the viral video of his arrest. The clerk entered first, followed by the prosecutor, a young white woman with sharp eyes and an uncertain posture. Her nameplate read Karen Lowe. Then came Judge Harper, tall, gray-haired, and stern-faced. The courtroom stood briefly as he took his seat. State versus Marcus Hill, the clerk called out. Marcus stood, shoulders straight, hands clasped in front of him. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked over the papers on his bench. You've been charged with property violation, obstruction of investigation, and resisting authority, Harper said, voice firm. Marcus replied calmly, I understand, Your Honor. The judge glanced up at him. His tone carried that edge of doubt, that quiet disbelief reserved for people who didn't fit the story written about them. Mr. Hill, I suggest you take this matter seriously. These are not minor offenses. I take them seriously, sir, Marcus said evenly. But I also take truth seriously. A whisper rolled through the few people seated in the gallery. Harper frowned. Do you have an attorney present? No, Your Honor, I'll represent myself. The prosecutor looked surprised. Mr. Hill, you understand that the court strongly advises— I understand the court's advice, Marcus interrupted gently. I'm capable of standing for myself. Judge Harper narrowed his eyes. Are you an attorney? Marcus smiled slightly. Something like that. The judge sighed. Very well. We'll proceed with the preliminary hearing. Ms. Lowe, your opening statement, please. Karen Lowe stood clearing her throat. Her voice was steady, but there was something uneasy in her tone, as if the words she was reading didn't fully belong to her. Your Honor, on the evening of May 12th, the defendant, Marcus Hill, was observed driving a vehicle, matching the description of one involved in a hit-and-run. When officers attempted to conduct a lawful inspection, the defendant refused to comply and became confrontational. The officers were forced to detain him for safety and investigative purposes. Marcus stood silently, hands clasped behind his back. When she finished, Judge Harper turned to him. Mr. Hill, would you like to respond? Marcus nodded. Only with time, Your Honor. The truth always needs a little time to breathe. The judge looked at him for a long second. Then quietly he said, "We'll see how much air that truth has left, Mr. Hill." Marcus was taken back to the holding area behind the courtroom during recess. A small room with 2 metal chairs, a water cooler, and a guard by the door. He asked for a notepad and pen. The guard hesitated, then handed one over. Marcus began to write. His handwriting was slow, steady, every line structured like a case file. He listed the charges, the officer names, the time of arrest, the made-up statute. His military-trained mind worked methodically. Every memory from last night was a piece of evidence waiting to be organized. As he wrote, he could hear faint murmurs outside, journalists talking, the shuffling of paperwork, the hum of voices building like distant thunder. The guard, a young black man named Ellis, glanced over. "You some kind of lawyer?" Marcus didn't look up. "Something close." Ellis tilted his head. "You sound too calm for a guy they just locked up for nothing." Marcus smiled faintly. "Because calm is how you survive the storm." Ellis stared for a second, then nodded slowly. "Whatever you got going on, man, I hope you walk out clean." Marcus stopped writing and looked up at him. "Walking out clean isn't the goal, son. Walking out with truth intact, that's what matters." A short silence hung between them. Ellis seemed to think about that. Outside, the courthouse lobby had grown louder. Reporters were gathering, their cameras ready. Someone had recognized Marcus Hill, a local educator, community mentor, and former legal officer. Rumors spread fast he's a veteran. He knows the law. He's calm because he's planning something. Back in the small room, Marcus finished his notes. He folded the paper neatly, looked toward the door, and whispered to himself, "They think I'm fighting for my freedom. They don't know I'm fighting for theirs, too." The door opened. "Court's resuming," the guard said. Marcus stood, adjusted his posture, and followed. The calm before the storm had ended. The courtroom was quiet, but the air was heavy with tension. Officers Dugan and Mills sat near the front. The prosecutor shuffled her papers nervously as Judge Harper cleared his throat. "Ms. Lowe, you may call your first witness." "Officer Dugan, Your Honor." Dugan walked confidently to the stand, badge gleaming under the bright lights. He took the oath and sat down, glancing briefly at Marcus, certain the case was already won. "Officer Dugan," the prosecutor began, "please describe what happened on May 12th. "We observed a blue SUV fail to signal," Dugan said smoothly. "When we initiated a stop, the driver became defensive and refused to exit the vehicle. We arrested him for obstruction." "Did the defendant resist physically?" "No, not physically, but he was verbally resistant, argumentative." "Thank you, officer." Judge Harper turned to Marcus. "Your cross-examination, Mr. Hill." Marcus rose slowly, rolling up his orange sleeves. His tone was calm but sharp. "Officer Dugan, can you read the charge you filed against me?" "Violation of state property and resisting inspection," Dugan replied, flipping through his report. "I'd like you to point out the Georgia statute that defines resisting inspection," Marcus said evenly. Dugan hesitated. "It's part of standard code." "Which code?" The officer shifted. "It's standard law enforcement protocol." Marcus took a small step forward. "Officer, I'm asking for the statute number, because as far as I know, no such law exists in Georgia." The courtroom fell silent. The prosecutor looked uncertain. Judge Harper frowned. "Officer, answer the question." Dugan stammered. "Your Honor, I might have miswritten the term." "You might have, or you did." "I did," Dugan muttered. Marcus continued, voice calm and precise. "Did you run my license plate before detaining me?" "No, sir." "Find any evidence linking my vehicle to the alleged hit and run?" "No, sir." "So you arrested me under a false charge without verification or probable cause?" "We were following standard procedure," Dugan said weakly. Marcus turned slightly to the judge. "Your Honor, it seems standard procedure now walks a fine line between law and assumption." A ripple of whispers ran through the room. Judge Harper tapped his gavel. "Order." Marcus looked back at Dugan. "You said I was argumentative. Did I shout?" "No." "Did I threaten you?" "No." "Did I resist physically?" "No." "Then tell me, officer, what made you feel I was resisting?" Dugan shifted uncomfortably. "You just had a tone." The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus's eyes locked on him. "A tone?" he asked softly. "Or a color?" Dugan's face went red. The prosecutor looked down. Even Judge Harper hesitated before clearing his throat. "Let's move on, Mr. Hill." Marcus nodded politely. "No further questions, Your Honor." As Marcus sat, whispers spread across the courtroom. Reporters typed fast. This was bigger than a traffic stop. Judge Harper called the next witness. Officer Mills walked up young and nervous. His hands trembled as he took the oath. "Officer Mills," the prosecutor said gently, "did you and Officer Dugan have reason to suspect the defendant's vehicle?" "Yes, ma'am." "Did you feel threatened?" "Not exactly." He was calm, just confident. "Confident?" "Yes, ma'am. Like he knew something we didn't." Marcus smiled faintly. When his turn came, he stood again. "Officer Mills, how long have you been on the force?" 3 years, sir." "And how many stops have you conducted?" "About 200. In those, have you ever arrested someone for resisting inspection?" Mills shook his head. "No, sir." "Because it doesn't exist, right?" "Yes, sir." Marcus's tone softened. "You're a good officer, son. Don't let someone else's mistakes stain your badge." Mills swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." Judge Harper leaned back, watching carefully. Cracks were forming in the case. Marcus gave a small nod. "No further questions, Your Honor. Court will recess for lunch," Judge Harper announced. As Marcus sat, Dugan and Mills avoided his gaze. The prosecutor looked down at her notes, confidence slipping. But Marcus didn't smile. He knew this was just the beginning. The truth had begun to breathe, but it still had to stand. When the court reconvened after lunch, the air felt heavier. The benches were now full. Word had spread across town. The video of Marcus's cross-examination was already circulating online. People came to see the man, who calmly dismantled 2 officers without raising his voice. Judge Harper entered, his expression unreadable. He tapped the gavel once. "Let's continue. Officer Mills, you may step down." Marcus stood quietly, his chains lightly clinking as he adjusted his posture. He had no lawyer beside him, no family sitting behind him, but he didn't look alone. There was something about his presence that filled the room, quiet authority, the kind that couldn't be faked. The prosecutor shifted nervously, unsure of her footing. "Your Honor," she said, "we request that the defendant explain his occupation and qualifications to represent himself. The court needs to ensure he understands legal procedure." Judge Harper nodded. "Agreed. Mr. Hill, please state your credentials for the record." Marcus took a breath and stepped forward. His voice was calm, but carried a deep echo that filled the room. "Your Honor, I served in the United States Army for 22 years. Retired at the rank of Brigadier General." The courtroom went silent. Even the shuffling of papers stopped. Marcus continued. "After retirement, I joined the Department of Justice as a federal investigative prosecutor. I've trained law enforcement officers on constitutional rights, lawful detention, and racial bias procedures. I've also worked with the State Ethics Committee to review officer misconduct cases." The prosecutor's mouth fell slightly open. The 2 arresting officers froze, their faces pale. Judge Harper blinked twice, clearly taken aback. "You're telling this court that you are a former Brigadier General and current federal prosecutor?" "Yes, sir," Marcus said, "and I can provide documentation if needed. My ID was among the items seized during my arrest." For a long moment, no one spoke. The quiet grew so thick that the faint hum of the ceiling fan sounded like thunder. Finally, the judge leaned forward. "Mr. Hill, why didn't you disclose this information earlier?" Marcus looked straight at him. "Because I wanted to see how justice behaves when it doesn't recognize rank or title, how it treats an ordinary black man on an ordinary day." The audience murmured. The judge raised his gavel. "Order." But Marcus kept speaking, his tone even. "Your Honor, I wanted to prove something. Not to embarrass this court, but to reveal how quickly law turns into assumption when the wrong man stands behind the right truth." The words hit like quiet lightning. The prosecutor closed her folder. She didn't want to speak anymore. The officers stared at the floor. Judge Harper looked unsettled, a proud man facing a truth too sharp to ignore. "Mr. Hill," he said carefully, "this revelation changes the context of this trial significantly. We'll review the charges and the officer's conduct in full." Marcus nodded. "Thank you, Your Honor, but remember, I'm not here to save myself. I'm here to hold the mirror." The afternoon light had turned pale and gray, filtering weakly through the high windows. The courtroom felt colder now. The audience was silent, their attention locked on every word. Judge Harper turned to the prosecutor. "Do you wish to continue?" Karen Lowe hesitated, then shook her head. "No, Your Honor. The state withdraws all charges." The gavel hit once. "All charges are dropped. Mr. Hill, you are free to go." But Marcus didn't move. He stood there, hands resting lightly on the defense table, eyes focused on the judge. "Your Honor, before I leave, I'd like to make a statement, if the court will allow." The judge hesitated, then quietly said, "Go ahead, Mr. Hill." Marcus walked to the center of the courtroom. His orange jumpsuit still marked him as a prisoner, but his posture, his voice, his gaze, all carried the weight of command. He looked around the room, at the officers, the prosecutor, the judge, the reporters, and the ordinary citizens in the back rows. His words came slow and deliberate. "Every week, men who look like me stand here, some guilty, some innocent. But before the truth even gets to speak, the system has already made its decision." He paused, his voice softened. "When those officers stopped me, they didn't see a teacher, a veteran, or a father. They saw a threat. They saw a problem. And that sight, that instant judgment, is what poisons justice from the inside." The audience listened, silent. Marcus continued, "I've seen this system from every side. As a soldier, as a lawyer, and now as a man in cuffs. The law is supposed to protect us all equally, but equality doesn't start in the courtroom. It starts in the heart of the man wearing the badge. It starts with respect." He looked at the two officers. "You didn't know who I was. That's fine. You don't need to know a man's rank to treat him like a human being. You just need to remember that the power you carry belongs to the people, not to your pride." Officer Dugan stared at the floor, his face burning red. Officer Mills blinked rapidly, fighting emotion. Marcus turned toward the judge. "Your Honor, justice isn't a word carved on a building. It's a promise we keep, one action at a time. I didn't come here to shame anyone. I came here to remind us all what that promise still means." He let the silence linger, then nodded once. "That's all I have to say." The room erupted in quiet applause, not loud but heavy with respect. Even Judge Harper didn't stop it. He just looked down for a long moment before speaking. "Mr. Hill," he said softly, "on behalf of this court, I apologize for what you've endured." Marcus met his gaze. Apology accepted. "Your Honor, but the real healing begins when it never happens again." Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, bright, heavy with something bigger than victory. Reporters swarmed, asking questions all at once. "Mr. Hill, do you plan to sue the department? Will you press charges? How does it feel to win?" Marcus raised his hand gently. The noise quieted. This was never about winning. It was about reminding people that the law belongs to everyone, not just those who carry a badge or wear a robe. The law is only alive when it's fair. He paused, looking at the cameras. "And if we want justice, we have to stop seeing color as evidence." His voice cracked slightly. He didn't hide it. "I was raised by a mother who cleaned offices at night so I could study. She told me once, 'You can't fight hate with hate, son. You fight it by standing taller than it expects you to.'" He looked around at the young faces watching. "So stand tall. Every time they try to make you small, stand taller." The crowd applauded softly. The sound wasn't loud, it was respectful, real. The video of Marcus's defense spread across the internet within hours. News anchors replayed the line again and again. "You don't protect the law by twisting it. You protect it by living it." On social media, millions shared the clip, calling him the calm general. Students from his community center made signs that read, "Knowledge is power, calm is strength." A week later, Marcus returned to the law center. His students stood outside clapping as he arrived. Jamal, the shy 19-year-old, ran up to him. "Sir, you really did what you always teach us. You stayed calm." Marcus smiled warmly. "That's the real test, Jamal. Calmness isn't weakness. It's control." He walked into the classroom and wrote 3 words on the board. Rights, respect, responsibility. He turned to the students. "These are the pillars of justice. Learn your rights, show respect, and carry your responsibility. Because the world may not give you fairness, but it can't take your dignity unless you hand it over." Months passed. The storm faded, but its echo stayed. One late afternoon, Marcus sat in his office reviewing files for a new legal outreach program. There was a knock on his door. "Come in," he said. Judge Harper stepped inside, hat in hand. His expression was humble, different. "Mr. Hill," the judge said softly, "I wanted to see you in person." Marcus stood, surprised. "Your Honor, please sit." Harper did. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the judge sighed. "I've been on the bench for 30 years. I thought I'd seen every kind of man come through my courtroom. But that day, I realized I hadn't. Marcus listened quietly. Harper continued, I judged you before hearing you, and for that I'm sorry. I've been thinking about your words ever since. About integrity and calm. Maybe that's what real justice is. Not rules. Not punishment. Just truth that doesn't shake. Marcus smiled gently. Then you've already learned what matters most, sir. The law only works when those who hold it learn from those who face it. The judge nodded, stood, and extended his hand. Thank you for teaching me. Marcus shook it firmly. Thank you for listening. Later that evening, Marcus sat on his porch watching the sky fade into twilight. The world was quiet. He thought about the long road, from soldier to prosecutor, from teacher to defendant, from accused man to symbol of calm justice. He looked up at the stars and whispered, Truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to stand. The wind brushed gently through the trees. Somewhere in that soft night, peace finally found its place. Your turn? What's the life lesson you're walking away with? Tell us in the comments. Like and subscribe the channel for more interesting videos.